The stars stretched endlessly outside the small window of Marcus Hale's ship. He had been traveling alone for weeks, exploring unknown space far beyond the usual human routes. His ship was old, patched together from spare parts he had collected during years of wandering. It had no shiny weapons, no powerful shields, only what he needed to survive. But Marcus was not worried. He had always believed that exploration was not about firepower but about courage. That night, or what passed as night in the void of space, his ship's console began to beep loudly. A red warning light flashed. "Engine temperature rising," the screen said. Marcus muttered under his breath and started flipping switches. He had seen this before, but this time the heat climbed too fast. The ship rattled. Sparks flew. He knew he had no choice. He searched for the nearest planet that could support life. The scanner found one within range, though its details were strange. The world was green and rich with air, but its surface glowed with patterns. Massive structures, towers, and ships moving like insects across the atmosphere. "This is not empty," Marcus whispered. "Somebody lives here." But if he did not land soon, his ship would tear apart. He guided the vessel down. The ship entered the alien skies with fire trailing behind it. Villages and fortresses looked up. Soldiers shouted in a language Marcus could not understand. The burning trail pointed straight to their land. Finally, with shaking hands, Marcus forced the ship to the ground in a wide clearing near a city of black stone towers. The landing was rough. The hull screeched. Dust and smoke filled the air. Then silence. Marcus leaned back in his chair, breathing hard. He had made it. His ship, however, was almost destroyed. Before he could think of repairs, a deep horn sounded outside. He stepped out of the hatch and froze. All around him stood alien warriors. They were tall, armored in silver and black. Their eyes glowed faintly yellow. Their weapons were long spears made of metal that seemed to hum with power. They shouted to each other, forming a ring around him. Marcus slowly raised his hands. "I come in peace," he said, though he doubted they understood his words. The aliens barked orders, moving closer. One of them jabbed a spear toward his chest. Marcus swallowed. He wore only his old jacket and a faded shirt beneath it. On the shirt was a symbol, an old emblem from Earth history he had picked up at a market back home. It was nothing special to him, only a reminder of an ancient human army. But when the alien's leader saw it, he stopped. His yellow eyes widened. He shouted something sharp and urgent. The others froze. The ring of spears lowered slightly. Confused, Marcus looked down at his shirt. The emblem, once just a decoration, now seemed to burn under the alien stares. The warriors began to part, stepping aside as heavy footsteps approached. Out of the smoke and dust came a figure unlike the others. She was tall, graceful, yet carried herself with the weight of command. Her armor was dark but edged with gold. A crown-like piece rested on her head. Her eyes were sharp, glowing brighter than all the rest. The soldiers bowed low. Marcus knew at once this was their queen. She walked slowly toward him, her gaze never leaving his chest. When she stood only a few steps away, the air itself felt heavy. The soldiers waited in silence. The queen's eyes studied the symbol on Marcus's shirt. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, to Marcus's shock, she straightened her back, brought her hand across her chest, and gave him a deep salute. The soldiers gasped. They looked at each other in disbelief. Some dropped to one knee. Others whispered frantically. Marcus blinked. He did not understand. Why would a queen, ruler of a powerful people, salute a lone human explorer with no weapons, no army, and a failing ship? The queen spoke, her voice clear and commanding. Though Marcus did not understand the words, the tone carried respect, almost reverence. She raised her hand again, pointing at the symbol. Then she looked into his eyes as if asking him a question. Marcus touched his shirt, then shook his head slightly, unsure how to answer. It was just a shirt. Just an emblem from a time long past on Earth. But for these aliens, it was something more. The queen turned to her soldiers and barked an order. Instantly, the circle broke. The spears were lowered. Instead of enemies, they now stood as guards protecting Marcus. Two of them stepped forward carefully, motioning for him to follow. Marcus hesitated, but then nodded. He had no choice. The queen herself walked beside him as they moved toward the black towers of the alien city. As they passed through the streets, alien civilians lined the sides, watching. Whispers spread like fire. All eyes were on the human with the strange symbol. Some bowed. Others simply stared. Marcus felt the weight of it all. He had come here by accident, yet now he was being treated as if he carried something sacred. Inside the great hall of the Black Towers, the Queen led him to a chamber filled with glowing crystals and banners marked with the same emblem he wore. Marcus's heart pounded. The walls told stories, carved in stone, figures of warriors with symbols on their chests, fighting beside the Queen's people against dark creatures. The Queen pointed at the carvings, then at Marcus. Her eyes burned with certainty. Marcus realized the truth. The emblem on his shirt was not just human history. Long ago it had crossed the stars. Humans had been here before, fighting in wars that shaped this empire. They had left behind a mark, a legacy. And now, by pure chance, Marcus carried it again. The Queen saluted him once more, this time with a small bow of her head. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He did not know what this meant, or why fate had chosen him. But one thing was clear. His life had changed forever. The alien Queen saw not just a traveler, but the return of something lost to history, and the galaxy would never be the same. The throne hall of the alien Queen was silent. The soldiers stood stiff, their spears resting against the floor, while the Queen herself sat tall on her black stone seat. The air was heavy, filled with an unspoken weight. Marcus stood before her, still wearing the same faded shirt with the strange emblem. He felt small under her sharp gaze. His hands were restless, shifting at his sides. He had no translator, no way to fully understand her words. Yet when the Queen raised her hand, pointed at his chest, and spoke slowly, Marcus realized she was trying to bridge the gap. The Queen's voice was low, calm, but firm. She repeated a single word again and again, pointing to his shirt, then pointing to the stone carvings on the wall. Marcus followed her hand. The carvings showed warriors with the same emblem. They were human-like in shape, though taller, their faces covered with helmets. They stood beside the Queen's people, holding banners marked with the same symbol. Marcus took a step forward, staring closely. The carvings were old, worn by time, but the details were clear. He touched the stone with his fingers, tracing the emblem. The Queen nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving him. Marcus whispered to himself, "Humans? Here, that's impossible." The Queen gave a small order. 2 servants hurried into the chamber, carrying heavy tablets of crystal. They placed them on a pedestal before Marcus. With emotion, the Queen invited him to look. The crystals glowed. Images appeared inside them, scenes from long ago. He saw alien armies fighting terrible beasts with burning eyes. He saw ships descending from the sky, shaped differently from the alien craft he had seen so far. The newcomers wore armor, and on their chests, glowing bright, was the very same emblem. Marcus's mouth went dry. "Humans," he said again, though softly this time. The Queen spoke more words, her tone serious. Though Marcus could not understand them, her meaning was clear. These warriors had not only been real, they had saved her people. One of the soldiers, an older figure with scars across his face, stepped forward. He bowed to the Queen, then pointed at Marcus, his voice filled with doubt. He spoke quickly, his tone sharp. Marcus could guess what he was saying. Not everyone believed. To them, Marcus looked weak, just one man with no army, no power. The Queen silenced him with a single glare. Marcus watched carefully. He realized something important. This symbol was not just history to them. It was sacred. It was a promise of protection. For their Queen to salute him was no small act, it was a declaration. But Marcus also felt the weight of that declaration. He was no hero from legend. He was a simple explorer, a mechanic, a wanderer. How could he carry the burden of an ancient legacy? The Queen rose from her throne and stepped down slowly. She stood face to face with him, her eyes steady. She spoke again, this time softer, almost like a teacher speaking to a child. Marcus pointed to himself, then shook his head. "I'm not one of them." "I'm not," he sighed. "I'm just me." The Queen tilted her head. She seemed to understand his doubt. Yet she pointed once more to the symbol, then to her heart. Marcus felt something stir inside him. Maybe she didn't see him as a hero. Maybe she saw the spirit behind the symbol, the courage, the fire, the human heart that refused to break. The hall door opened suddenly. A younger alien officer rushed in, kneeling before the Queen. he spoke in a hurried tone. The Queen's face darkened and her hand tightened on the arm of her throne. Marcus looked from one to the other, confused. But the tension was easy to read. Trouble was coming. The Queen gave a sharp command. Soldiers moved quickly. Some left the hall at once. Others stayed, their eyes locked on Marcus as though protecting him. The officer pointed at Marcus's shirt, then at the horizon beyond the tall windows. His tone was accusing. Marcus understood. Word of his arrival was spreading. Not all saw him as a savior. Some would see him as a threat. The Queen's expression softened only when she turned back to Marcus. She gestured for him to follow. They walked through long corridors lit by glowing blue crystals. Murals lined the walls showing battles, victories, and ceremonies of the past. Always the emblem was present. Finally, they entered a smaller chamber filled with ancient objects. Weapons rested on pedestals. Armor stood on stands, polished but unused. In the center of the room lay a broken banner, its cloth faded yet still carrying the emblem. The Queen touched it gently, then looked at Marcus. Her voice was low as she spoke, but her eyes glistened with memory. She seemed to be telling him that long ago, when her people faced destruction, the ones wearing this emblem had come. They fought side by side, and when the war ended, they left, promising to return if ever the symbol rose again. Marcus stood frozen. His heart beat fast. The shirt he wore, nothing more than a piece of fabric to him, was to them a sign of destiny. For the first time, Marcus felt a strange pride. He thought of Earth, of its long struggles, its wars, its resilience. Perhaps humans had been here long ago, carving their mark in ways forgotten on Earth but remembered among the stars. The Queen looked at him once more, then performed the salute again, fist to chest, head bowed slightly. This time Marcus did not stand still. Slowly, awkwardly, he lifted his hand and tried to copy the gesture. The Queen's eyes widened, then softened into something close to a smile. At that moment, the chamber shook. The floor trembled. Distant horns sounded outside. Soldiers rushed in, shouting reports. Marcus turned sharply, his heart racing. The Queen's calm expression hardened. The officer from before pointed out the window. Smoke rose in the distance. Enemy banners could be seen moving toward the city. The Queen clenched her fist. She barked an order, and the soldiers saluted, running to their posts. She turned to Marcus. Her hand brushed the emblem on his shirt once more. Her meaning was clear. History was repeating itself. Enemies were coming, and the people would look to him, the one who carried the forgotten symbol. Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to say he wasn't ready, that he wasn't a hero, but the Queen's eyes held steady, filled with unshakable faith. And deep inside, Marcus wondered if perhaps, by accident or fate, he had been brought here for this very moment. The forgotten history was no longer forgotten. It was alive again, and now it demanded proof. The city outside the black stone towers was alive with movement. Soldiers ran in every direction, preparing defenses. The Queen's voice echoed through the corridors, giving orders with precision. Marcus followed her as she moved through the hallways, feeling both awe and fear. He had never been in a place so full of power, so full of history. Finally, they arrived at a wide courtyard surrounded by high walls. Strange machines stood on one side. Towers loomed over the area, and beyond the walls, forests and cliffs stretched as far as Marcus could see. The air smelled sharp and earthy. The Queen stopped and turned to him. She gestured toward a gate at the far end of the courtyard. Beyond it, he could see creatures moving. They were enormous, with thick scales and eyes that glowed like embers. Their claws could easily crush a man. Their growls shook the ground. Marcus swallowed hard. The Queen spoke in her deep voice, repeating words Marcus could not understand. But her gestures made the meaning clear. "This is your trial," she said slowly, translating through actions more than words. "You must prove yourself worthy of the symbol you wear." Marcus blinked. "Trial?" he whispered. "Alone?" The Queen gave a small nod. She did not speak more. Around her, the soldiers looked tense, yet their eyes held respect. Some even seemed curious to see what this human could do. Two officers brought forward weapons for him. A sword-like blade appeared in his hands. It was heavier than anything Marcus had ever lifted, but he adjusted quickly, feeling its balance. A shield followed, small but strong, crafted for one human. The Queen stepped back. Her gaze was firm. Marcus understood. It was time. The gate opened. The creatures roared, their bodies twisting and turning. They were fast, larger than any predator he had faced before. Their claws scraped against the stone floor. Their jaws opened wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Marcus's heart pounded. He moved forward cautiously, raising the shield. The creatures lunged. He swung the sword. The first strike barely grazed one of them, but he managed to hold it back. Another attacked from the side. Marcus ducked, rolling under its reach, then jabbed upward with the blade. He realized quickly that brute strength alone would not work. The creatures were too fast, too strong. He had to think. He glanced around the courtyard. There were stones, broken pillars, and narrow paths. Using these, he started to lead the creatures into traps. A pillar he knocked over created a barrier, slowing them. A narrow path forced them to come one by one, giving him the chance to strike with precision. The queen watched silently. Soldiers behind her whispered, amazed. The human, they thought, was clever. Not powerful in the traditional way, but smart. Resourceful. Marcus's muscles burned. His arms were sore, his legs tired, but he did not stop. He remembered the stories the queen had shown him. The humans who had worn this symbol before had relied not only on strength, but on intelligence and courage. He began to smile slightly, feeling a connection he had never understood before. Perhaps it was not the blade or shield that mattered. Perhaps it was the human spirit, the refusal to give up even when the odds were impossible. Hours passed. The creatures were relentless, but Marcus's traps and quick thinking kept him alive. He learned their movements, predicting their strikes, dodging and weaving. One by one, the beasts fell back, defeated but unharmed beyond recovery. Finally, the last one hesitated, its glowing eyes watching him. Marcus raised his shield and sword, steadying his breath. Then he noticed something. Its eyes were intelligent, curious almost. He lowered his sword slowly. The creature growled softly, then stepped back, bowing its head slightly before retreating into the forest. The courtyard fell silent. Even the queen's soldiers seemed shocked. Marcus dropped to his knees, exhausted but alive. He looked at the queen. Her hand brushed the emblem on his chest again, a gesture of approval this time. She spoke words he did not understand, but the tone was unmistakable: praise, respect, recognition. Marcus felt a strange pride, not in himself, but in the history he had become part of. He was not a hero by birth, but he had survived, using his mind, courage, and persistence, the same qualities the humans who had come before had used. One of the soldiers stepped forward, speaking quickly to the queen. She nodded, and then the soldier turned to Marcus, offering a hand to help him rise. As he stood, Marcus felt the weight of the symbol more than ever. This trial had been more than a test of strength. It had been a test of heart, and somehow he had passed. The queen led him to a small chamber overlooking the battlefield beyond the city walls. From here, Marcus could see more of her people preparing for war. Ships hovered in the distance, strange and elegant, unlike anything he had seen. Soldiers moved in perfect order, disciplined and ready. The queen pointed again at the symbol on his chest, then to the horizon. Marcus understood immediately. Trouble was coming. The trial was not over. He had proven his worth to her, but there were others who would doubt him, test him further. He nodded silently. He would face whatever came next. The queen motioned for her advisors to join. They spoke quickly among themselves, pointing at Marcus, then at the battlefield. One older soldier stepped forward. He seemed skeptical, his yellow eyes sharp. Marcus could see the question in his gaze. How could this human help in the coming war? Marcus swallowed. He had no army, no advanced weapons. Yet he realized something important. The humans of legend had done more than fight with weapons. They had used strategy, invention, and courage. If he could do the same, perhaps he could tip the balance. The queen's gaze remained on him, unwavering. Her soldiers watched. Marcus felt the eyes of an empire upon him. That night he trained with the soldiers. Though his body ached, he learned their movements, their signals, and their tactics. He shared ideas in return. Simple human tricks that could confuse enemies. Clever ways to use the terrain. Methods of surprise attacks. The soldiers were skeptical at first, but slowly they began to see the value. Marcus was not just a human wearing a shirt with a symbol. He was a mind they could trust, a partner in strategy. By dawn, Marcus stood atop the city walls. The first light of the alien sun touched the black towers in the distant forests. The queen joined him, silent for a moment. Together they watched the horizon. In the distance, dark shapes moved. The threat that had been whispered about was real. A hostile force was approaching. Marcus clenched his fists. He did not know exactly what awaited him, but he knew this: he could face it. The Queen saluted him again, her hand resting on her heart. This time, Marcus returned the gesture with confidence. He had survived the trial of the courtyard. He had earned the respect of the Queen, and now, the true test was about to begin. The trial of war, where courage, strategy, and the human spirit would be tested against the might of an empire. Marcus took a deep breath. The symbol on his chest no longer felt like just a piece of cloth. It was a promise, a challenge, and a key to a legacy long forgotten. He was ready, and the universe was about to see what humans could do. The morning sun rose over the black towers, casting long shadows across the alien city. Marcus stood on the high walls, scanning the horizon where distant banners and warships moved steadily toward the city. The air was tense, filled with the distant hum of alien engines and the sharp cries of soldiers preparing for battle. The Queen approached quietly, her steps soft but commanding. Her eyes were focused, sharp like a blade. Marcus turned to her, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had survived the trial of the beasts, earned her respect, but the real test was about to begin. As the Queen spoke to her generals, Marcus listened carefully. Though he could not understand every word, the gestures and tone told the story. The city's defenses were strong but not invincible. Enemy forces were skilled, well-armed, and cunning. Marcus felt a shiver of unease. This was not a simple battle. This was a test of strategy, loyalty, and trust. After the meeting, Marcus was guided to a strategy chamber. The room was filled with maps, glowing crystal projections, and holographic displays showing enemy movements. The Queen gestured for Marcus to study them. He leaned closer, tracing paths with his fingers. Patterns emerged. The enemy was not just attacking. They were trying to divide the city, using multiple forces to strike from unexpected directions. Marcus realized immediately that brute strength alone would not be enough. The Queen's soldiers had skill, but they needed new tactics to counter such clever attacks. Marcus suggested ideas, human strategies adapted for alien warfare. He drew lines on the maps, pointing out ambush points, fallback positions, and routes for rapid reinforcement. The generals looked at him skeptically. Many of them were seasoned warriors, veterans of countless battles. Why should they listen to a single human with no army? The Queen's eyes met Marcus's. Her silent command was clear. Trust him. The generals grumbled, but eventually nodded. Some were convinced, some hesitant. Marcus understood. Not everyone would accept him easily, but this was the beginning. That night, as the city slept under watchful towers, Marcus walked through the corridors with one of the Queen's trusted officers, a tall alien named Varys. Varys spoke cautiously, his yellow eyes reflecting doubt. "Not all welcome you," Varys said slowly. "Some believe you are here to deceive the Queen, to weaken her rule." Marcus frowned. "Why would they think that? I've done nothing but survive and help." Varys shook his head. "Humans are unknown to us. You are unpredictable. That frightens many." Marcus nodded slowly. He had faced danger in the trial, but this was different. Here the threat was not from beasts or the battlefield. It was from the hearts of the people he was supposed to protect. The next day, whispers spread through the city. The word of a human bearing the ancient symbol reached ears that did not trust the Queen. Some officers questioned her decision to follow his advice. Secret meetings were held in shadowed halls. Marcus noticed the tension. He watched as groups of alien soldiers huddled together, speaking in urgent tones, then dispersing when he approached. Something was brewing, an undercurrent of betrayal that could strike when the city was most vulnerable. The Queen, however, remained calm. She met Marcus in her private chambers and spoke through gestures that he could understand. Her meaning was clear. Some would try to manipulate events to challenge her rule. He needed to be ready, not just for the enemy outside, but for those who might strike from within. Marcus's mind raced. He had come to this world by accident, wearing a simple shirt with a symbol, yet here he was at the center of an empire's fate. The responsibility was overwhelming, but he also felt a strange sense of purpose. He had survived the trial of beasts. Now he had to survive the trial of trust. As the sun set, Marcus walked through the city walls, inspecting the defenses. Soldiers moved efficiently, setting traps, positioning weapons, and readying warships. He suggested small adjustments. positions for snipers, patrol rotations, and ways to reinforce weak points. Some soldiers listened attentively, others dismissed his advice with scoffs. By nightfall, Marcus had earned the cautious respect of several units. They began to see that his ideas, though unusual, were effective. He had the skill to think differently, to anticipate enemy movements, to turn weakness into advantage. But shadows lingered. In hidden corridors, alien officers plotted. One of them, a man named Rovan, spoke in whispers to a small group. "The Queen trusts the human too much," he said. "If we strike now, we can claim power for ourselves. The city will fall into our hands." Another officer frowned. "But the human survived the trial of fire. He is no ordinary man." Rovan's eyes narrowed. "Exactly why we cannot allow him to influence the Queen further. We must act before he shows her how dangerous he could be." Marcus remained unaware of the plotting as he continued his preparations. He trained soldiers personally, showing them how to move efficiently, how to coordinate attacks and defenses, how to use clever tricks to confuse an enemy. The Queen visited him often, offering encouragement through gestures and small smiles. Marcus grew more confident with each day. Seeing that his ideas worked, soldiers who had doubted him began to follow his instructions without question. Then, during the night, the first signs of betrayal appeared. A patrol led by a trusted officer failed to report back. Another officer disappeared from his post, leaving a gate unguarded. Marcus noticed the gaps immediately. He informed the Queen through hand signals, and she reacted swiftly, sending reinforcements. "It begins," Marcus muttered. He felt both fear and determination. The enemy outside would be dangerous, but enemies within could be even more deadly. The next morning, Marcus suggested new defensive measures to the Queen. He marked weak points, creating multiple layers of traps and fallback positions. Soldiers worked quickly, following his orders. The Queen watched, silently approving. Marcus knew the time was coming when he would have to confront the traitors directly. But he also knew that rushing blindly would be fatal. Strategy, patience, and careful observation were key. As he stood on the high walls that afternoon, looking at the approaching enemy forces, he felt a strange calm. The city was strong, the Queen was prepared, and he had earned the trust of many soldiers. But shadows of betrayal still lingered, waiting for the right moment to strike. He turned to the Queen. She raised her hand in the salute once again, this time with a quiet confidence. Marcus returned it firmly, feeling the weight of the symbol on his chest and the responsibility it carried. History repeats itself, he thought, but maybe we can write a better ending this time. The enemy forces were visible now, ships glinting in the alien sun, banners waving. Marcus studied their formations, recalling the maps and strategies they had discussed. He realized the challenge ahead was not just survival. It was to protect the Queen, the city, and the legacy of the humans who had once walked beside these people. Shadows moved within the walls of the city. He could not see them, but he felt their presence. The whispers of betrayal were like cold wind, hinting at danger that could come at any moment. Marcus tightened his fists, ready for whatever might arrive. The trial had changed him. He was no longer a mere traveler lost in space. He was a part of history, carrying the symbol that had once saved an empire. The Queen had trusted him. Her people were learning to trust him, and now he had to trust himself. He glanced at the horizon again. The enemy was close, but the greatest threat might not come from them. The shadows within the city, hidden and silent, were the ones he had to watch most carefully. Marcus took a deep breath. He knew that courage alone would not be enough. He needed wisdom, patience, and cleverness, and he had both the Queen and the symbol to remind him why he must succeed. The stage was set for the coming storm. The city, the Queen, and the legacy of humans were all tied to his actions. Marcus's heart beat steadily. He had survived beasts. He had earned respect. Now he would face betrayal, and show what humans could do when faced with impossible odds. The sun rose slowly over the alien city, casting a golden light across the black stone towers. Marcus stood atop the highest wall, staring at the enemy forces gathering beyond the city's edge. Hundreds of ships hovered in formation, and legions of soldiers marched forward, their armor shining in the morning light. Beside him, the Queen's hand rested lightly on the edge of the wall. Her eyes scanned the horizon with sharp focus, but she spared a glance at Marcus. The salute she offered was quiet but full of trust. Marcus returned it, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing against his chest. The symbol on his shirt was no longer just a piece of cloth. It had become a rallying sign, a symbol of courage and hope. The city's soldiers were ready, but Marcus knew this battle would test every skill he had. He had trained with them for days, teaching them how to use the terrain, how to anticipate the enemy, and how to coordinate attacks. He had gained their trust, but the enemy was clever, and the threat from traitors within the city still lingered. The first wave of attackers moved forward. Ships swooped low, firing beams that scorched the ground and shattered stone. Alien soldiers raised shields and weapons, responding with precision and discipline. Marcus ran down the walls, shouting instructions through hand signals and gestures. He pointed out weak points in the enemy formation, directing soldiers to intercept and flank the approaching forces. The Queen stepped forward, raising her hand to signal her commanders. Her voice, sharp and commanding, echoed across the battlefield. Soldiers moved with disciplined efficiency, forming defensive lines and protecting key positions. Then the ground shook with the arrival of the enemy's ground forces. Giant war machines rolled forward, crushing everything in their path. Marcus ran ahead of the troops using clever traps he had suggested. Stones, fallen pillars, and narrow pathways slowed the enemy advance. Soldiers cheered as the machines were trapped or toppled, amazed at the humans' ingenuity. But the battle was far from over. From the city walls, Marcus spotted movement among the ranks of the Queen's own people. Shadows shifted, officers whispered urgently to each other, and a small group of soldiers veered away from their posts. Marcus realized immediately. The traitors were acting. If they succeeded, the city would fall from within, no matter how strong the outer defenses were. He dashed toward the group, signaling loyal soldiers to follow. Using quick tactics, he cut off the traitors' escape routes and forced them into a corner. The Queen's soldiers moved with precision, capturing the traitors before they could cause serious harm. Marcus stood in the middle of the group, breathing heavily, knowing that clever thinking and swift action had prevented disaster. The Queen approached, her eyes meeting his, and she gestured her approval. The battle raged on. Marcus moved across the city walls, coordinating attacks and defenses. Enemy ships swooped close, but the city's energy barriers held firm. Soldiers used the tactics he had taught them, setting ambushes, coordinating counterattacks, and using every advantage of the terrain. On the horizon, the enemy general appeared, a massive figure on a heavily armed war machine. He commanded the enemy with authority, and his presence inspired fear among the attacking forces. Marcus realized that to win this battle, they had to focus not just on the soldiers but on the leader. He turned to the Queen, who nodded slightly. Together they devised a plan. Using clever distractions, small groups of soldiers moved to flank the enemy general while the main forces engaged the rest of the army. Marcus personally led the maneuver, guiding troops through narrow paths and ambush points. The enemy general was caught off guard. His war machine was slowed, trapped by the clever positioning Marcus had suggested. The Queen's forces attacked in unison, striking with precision and courage. Soldiers cheered as the enemy general was forced to retreat. But the battle was not yet over. Waves of enemy soldiers pressed forward, and the Queen herself took command, leading elite troops into the heart of the battlefield. Marcus stayed close, guiding movements, predicting enemy strategies, and adapting quickly to changing circumstances. Hours passed, and the battlefield became a blur of motion. Soldiers, ships, and war machines clashed. Marcus felt exhaustion in every muscle, but he could not stop. The lives of the Queen, her people, and the legacy of the humans depended on him. As night approached, the enemy forces began to falter. Their strategies had been outsmarted, their leader had been weakened, and the unity of the Queen's army, strengthened by Marcus's tactics, proved too strong. Slowly they began to retreat, withdrawing to regroup and lick their wounds. The city erupted in cheers. Soldiers hugged each other, celebrating the victory. The Queen raised her hand in salute, and Marcus returned it with pride. The symbol on his shirt had guided them, inspired them, and reminded them of a legacy long forgotten but never lost. The battle had been won, but Marcus knew that leadership required more than a single victory. The Queen turned to him, speaking in gestures he could understand. She pointed to the symbol, then to herself, and finally at the city. Her meaning was clear. He had earned her trust, her respect, and the respect of her people. Marcus nodded slowly. He had come to this world by chance, wearing a simple shirt with a symbol from Earth. Now, that symbol had helped save a city, protect a queen, and inspire an entire people. The night was quiet after the battle, filled with the sounds of repair, rebuilding, and relief. Soldiers patrolled the walls, keeping watch for any remaining threats. Marcus walked beside the queen, observing the damage and the signs of courage everywhere. "I never imagined this," Marcus whispered to himself. "A simple symbol. And here we are." The queen's eyes met his, her expression proud but serious. Marcus realized that the fight was not truly over. The legacy of humans was alive, but it would require constant vigilance, courage, and wisdom to maintain peace and honor. In the quiet of the night, Marcus looked out at the city he had helped save. The black towers gleamed under the stars, the banners waved proudly, and the soldiers, loyal and disciplined, rested with the knowledge that they had been part of something greater than themselves. Marcus felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the queen and her people, but to the humans of the past whose symbol he carried. They had fought, they had protected, and now he had joined their legacy. As he touched the emblem on his chest, he promised himself one thing: he would not fail. The queen, her empire, and the future of this alliance depended on him. The dawn of a new day approached, and with it, new challenges. Marcus knew that more tests, more threats, and more opportunities to prove courage and wisdom were ahead. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet pride, knowing that together with the queen, her people, and the legacy of the symbol, they had won a battle that would be remembered for generations. The city was safe, the traitors defeated, and the enemy repelled. Marcus had survived the trial of beasts, the trial of strategy, and the trial of betrayal. Now he stood ready for whatever the galaxy might throw at him next. The symbol on his shirt had brought him here, had saved lives, and had changed history. And Marcus knew one thing with certainty: humans, though distant in legend, had once again left their mark upon the stars.